And this is finding easy walks wherever you are, and 6 must-haves for your next walk, because if anyone has noticed, it's spring and everyone wants to get out. The ice is gone, and we're ready to get out, and it's nice to know where to go. You all have some amazing places right in your community. I like to start with the place that I'm talking to, and then kind of go out in concentric circles from there. And I look at a map and just say, okay, what are the neighboring towns? Because you might not be as familiar with the towns that are nearby. So we're going to start with Framingham, Natick, and Hopkinton, and then we'll branch out from there. And we'll talk a little bit about some of the things that you can do to keep yourself safe and to have a more enjoyable time when you're in the outdoors. So the first thing I'd like to do is point out that when we talk about easy walks, a lot of people have misconceptions. They'll say, oh, it's easy. And that basically is code for it's under 4 miles. And when I see a trail like this and people say, oh yeah, it's easy, it's really short, that's not easy for me. We look for trails that have not too many routes, not too many rocks, that are relatively level with something of interest along the way. Lots of people with mobility challenges, this would be an impassable place. So it would not be an easy walk, but I just like, there's lots in between, of course. I just like to make that point that when you talk about easy walks, when you're telling people what you look for, it's helpful if you give them specifics of what you're looking for. And this is what I've found to be really clear in communicating to people, that you're looking for a solid footing. And I pay attention a lot to trail surfaces. People who are more abled and haven't had any kind of health compromises, they forget, or they just aren't aware that that could be a problem. So not too many roots, not too many rocks, relatively level with something of interest along the way. And we're going to see lots of those tonight. Hopkinton State Park. We'll start with the state parks because each of you have state parks in your communities of both Hopkinton, Framingham, and Ashland, and Natick. All have, you've got Ashland nearby. So I don't think there's a state park in Natick. Oh, here, we'll just find out. So it's Hopkinton State Park. You've got heart healthy trails, you've got boat rentals, you've got easy walks and more challenging walks. And it's a really lovely, lovely place. It is open year round with limited parking in the winter. They don't charge in the winter. Come busy summer season, there is a charge to get into the main portion of Hopkinton State Park. But Hopkinton State Park actually has a headquarters office just within a half mile on 85 from where the main park entrance is. And they've got a lovely, lovely trail that you get some nice water views like this. And I still needed to use hiking poles. It was not handicapped accessible, but it was definitely solid footing. The trails were well marked. And there was some really lovely, intriguing things like this view of this stream coming through here on the Duck Pond Trail. It's right at the back of the state headquarters office. You'd never know there was a trail back there, and there is. So we were able to find very uncrowded trails right behind the state park headquarters office. Now you've got Callahan State Park in Framingham, and what I noticed when I visited there, it is extremely popular with dog walkers. In fact, when we got there, there was a pond that said, "This is only for dogs." So it was a dog swimming pond, not for people. I thought they were having a dog training class, and it turned out it was just friendly people with their dogs who are just having a great time there. There's an adjacent Sudbury Valley Trustees property there. Dogs I don't know that are, I'd have to check. I think there's signs saying dogs are not so welcome in that section of the property, but that's another state park we have right in Framingham. And in the Maycumber Reservation is a that's a town-owned property with a loop trail and water views. A lot of times, especially during this pandemic, we have worked as a family very, very hard to find less crowded places. And we have found typically town-owned properties are less crowded. And that's because a lot of times people from outside your town aren't even aware that the town-owned property exists. It doesn't have the same level of visibility that the state parks do or trustees of reservation. So these town-owned properties are often not very heavily used, and you're going to have a lot easier time avoiding people, but you'll have a quieter time and there won't be so many people there, which is for our purposes a real preference. So, and then you've got Broadmoor, which is a Mass Audubon property in Natick, and they've got a handicapped accessible path to their wetlands. There's varied terrain at Broadmoor. If you're not a Mass Audubon member, and they do check, they also require reservations because it is a very popular place, but there is handicapped accessible trail down to their handicapped accessible boardwalk. So that it's a really nice option that is not available everywhere you go, but Broadmoor does have this. They've also got options to walk over to the Charles River, but that's going to be more challenging trails. I was able to do that with my hiking poles. There's a real slope down to the Charles River. So it's a real varied place at Broadmoor. In Natick, you've also got trustees of the reservation. You've got Pagan Hill, and this is actually, I'm going to forget the name of the hill, Lewis Hill. You actually climb up Pagan Hill to get to this large open viewing place that's called Lewis Hill. The biggest challenge for Pagan Hill is that there's only one parking access. It's in Natick. There's a road in Dover that you would think you can get there, but there's no legal way to get there. There's private property that blocks the road. So you actually have to go through the Natick side of the access. There's all sorts of information on the Trustees of Reservation website. It's also in my More Easy Walks book, the updated book. So, but you get some beautiful, beautiful views. And we don't have a lot of places to get views in this area. Pagan Hill is one of them. And for the most part, the footing is really quite good. And of course, this hill is just a grassy hillside with very, very gentle slopes. So it's lovely. I like to point out to people that their town commons are, well, common. And so I can't even catalog how many town commons there are. And many, many of our town commons are built with easy walking in mind. They have paved sidewalks, whether they're cement or they're pavement. They have lots of benches, which are nice if you have stamina, if you're compromised in your stamina, that they're places that you can sit down and rest. There's often lots of historical things. What you're looking at was the old watering trough. I doubt if it was painted gold when it was used in Bellingham, but it's painted gold now in a place of honor in the Bellingham Town Common. But many of our town commons have these historical markers, things of historical significance, war memorials, and they're great places to meet friends and just spend some time getting a little more familiar with your own town's history. And typically they're places that you can park. They often have summer concerts. They're just wonderful places, both to sit and listen to a concert and to stroll along and get an easy walk, whatever town you find yourself in. In Framingham, we've got the Carol Getchell Trail, and this is over in the Saxonville neighborhood. It's another town-owned. It's got property. It's got Sudbury River canoe access at the north end of the trail. Some of the trail, besides the boardwalk, is very rooty and very rocky. And when I visited it in spring, was basically underwater. It is right next to the river. And yes, the river does come up under that boardwalk at times. But from what I understand with the Cochituate rail trail that's getting built, is that they're working to provide access to the Carol Getchell Trail from the rail trail that's being constructed in Framingham and Natick. I have not been up to be able to check on the status of all of that. I keep up as best I can, but I can't, there's just too much going on. There's a lot of work happening to getting rail trails developed. Very, very exciting. They put a bridge over Route 2, not Route 2, Route 9, excuse me, with the Cochituate Rail Trail, and that's going to get you over to the Conchita Reservoir. And I visited there before the rail trail was built, but this is the view that you're going to get of the Cochituate Rail, from the Cochituate Rail Trail, Framingham and Natick. So once that is built, that's going to be a lovely, lovely spot. A little noisy because of Route 9 and traffic noise, but it's still going to have beautiful views. Hopkinton has the Echo Trail, which gives you access, views and access where you kind of can find little paths down to the water of Echo Lake, which is the headwaters of the Charles River. The Echo Trail is actually a packed stone dust handicapped accessible trail. It's only about a mile in length. So it's, it doesn't go anywhere, it just goes alongside the lake, but it's just kind of cool when you think about the Charles River watershed and all the towns that covers, and how far the Charles goes all the way into Boston, of course. And the headwaters is right here in Hopkinton. It is privately owned. I'm not sure what the status is of that right now. And so there is no swimming allowed. They don't encourage spending a lot of time because it is a reservoir. But nobody stopped me when I took a picture. I think it's fine if you don't go and have your dogs going swimming in the water. But it's just a cool thing that's where the river starts, and it's right in Hopkinton. I'd like to talk about some of the things that you can do to be more comfortable on the trail. And one of the most important things is to invest in some hiking shoes. You see that I've got lug soles on these boots. This gives you a little more traction if the trail surface is a little questionable. It's a good idea to have something solid on your feet. I urge people, don't go out for a walk with open-toed shoes. You're going to get sand, you're going to get rocks, pebbles. You're going to be stopping, having to take them off, shake them out, find a place to sit down, put your shoes on, put your shoes off. And you can avoid all that by just putting boots on that are going to keep you safe when you're out in the outdoors. Notice that these are hiking socks that I got there. Those are not just regular wear around the house socks. I urge people, don't plan to wash those or put them in the dryer. You can wash them occasionally because, yeah, they'll get sinky, but you can also just let them dry out, and that will help get rid of the smell as well. When you put hiking socks in the dryer, that elastic that keeps them up, that keeps them from sliding down into your shoe, you're going to spend half of your walk pulling the socks up. So just don't put them in the dryer. Let them line dry. When you do, you put them in the washer, and just avoid at all costs putting them in the dryer. You really, really don't want to do that. Ask me how I know that. I have socks that I have had to throw away because all the elastic is gone and I just can't walk in them. And it's really sad because they were nice socks too. Make sure when you're headed out for a walk that you got a small pack. An old school backpacks work fine. You don't have to spend money on things that you don't already have. You probably have something. Rather than a shoulder bag that you're going to have things slung on one shoulder, have something that you can keep your hands free so that you can either use hiking poles or just so that you don't have things that you're paying attention to besides what's on the trail and the trail surfaces. You may have hanging down branches that you need to be paying attention to, looking up, not just down, and having everything in one pack is a great way to help you enjoy what's around you and not get distracted by things that might actually cause injury. You might not even realize that might happen. Make sure and bring a little water with you when you're on a trail. A sealed water bottle with fresh water is a great idea. A lot of those bottles of plastic water bottles, they've really skimped on the plastic lid, the twist tops, and those will pop off. If you're on the trail and you've tripped and fell, you're going to soak everything. Go ahead and get one of these nicer screw top bottles that aren't going to soak everything in your backpack. It's a good, very inexpensive investment, and making sure you've got water that's not going to leak all over everything when you're out for a walk. Make sure you bring a snack with you for anybody who's coming with you. You don't have to buy a prepackaged store-bought granola bar. You can also make your own homemade gourd with peanuts and raisins and chocolate, and make sure it's in a tightly sealed container. A Ziploc bag will do, but something that is sealed so that if something gets bumped, it doesn't again end up in the bottom of your backpack with sticky chocolate that's going to go everywhere. That really isn't fun. But snacks can make the difference when you're out on the trail between everybody coming back pretty cheerful and saying, let's do this again. Or people saying, yeah, that was one and done, I'm done. So it's a simple thing that you can do, and it can make a big difference in how much people enjoy their outings. And let's do it again. I, especially in the fall, as days get short, encourage people, make sure if you're leaving after lunchtime, you pack a headlamp. Again, a headlamp rather than a flashlight, because this keeps your hands free when you're out on the trail. They're very, very light, relatively inexpensive. Just put it in that backpack that you're not going to even think about what's there. If you don't need it, great. You didn't need it. If you did need it, you'd be really, really glad. It can make the difference between getting back to your car without injury and having to call somebody and say you're really in trouble. It's a very, very light and inexpensive insurance policy. Even in the summer, if you're in hilly areas, the sun is going to go down sooner than you might think. Our days are getting longer, but it does get dark every night. We're not in Alaska. And so this is the whole package, including a fully charged cell phone. I do encourage you, charge your cell phone before you leave. Make sure it's fully charged. Do not depend on that. Make sure if you're going someplace that you'll have a map that you have. If you get to the kiosk where at the head of a trail, a lot of times there will be a map. If you haven't printed out the map of where you're going, you can snap a picture with your cell phone, and then you got it right in hand that you can refer to as you're walking along. You can also use the cell phone to take pictures. I encourage you to take a camera as well as a cell phone, but sometimes a cell phone is all you need, or it's all you've got. And that works too. So boots, hiking socks, fresh water, snack, a backpack, headlamp, and a fully charged cell phone. Those are really, really going to make a difference in whether you have a great time out on the trail or not. Back to looking at some of the things that are right around in your neighborhood. Noanette Woodlands is just over the line in Dover, and that's a trustees of reservation property with views of Boston. Now it's got some wide and smooth trails, but because it's trustees of reservation and because it's a pretty big reservation, I've found the last couple of times that we've been in that area on the weekend, the parking area is jammed. It's really pretty amazing how busy it is. So I also encourage people, when you're going out, for many, many reasons, have a plan B in place. So if you go someplace and you find, for whatever your reason is, that it's not workable, have another place nearby. So you don't just say, that didn't work, I have to go home, I didn't get to do anything. But have your plan B, another place that you also have the map, or that you have the directions for how to get to, and see what's happening there. That's happened to us. We went to Noanette Woodlands and found that we couldn't even get in the parking lot. We drove a half mile down to Powysset Farm, that's also a trustees of reservation. We had an amazing time, and there were maybe 6 cars there. So it's really, really helpful to have that plan B, so you aren't disappointed and can have a great time. Now, the Upper Charles Trail is in Milford and Holliston, but it's right over the line from Hopkinton. The Charles River goes right by into Louisa Lake. That's part of the Charles River. And in Milford, the path is paved. It's stone dust when it transitions into Holliston. Both Milford and Holliston have completed their entire section of trail for a total of about 10 contiguous miles. It's town-owned, but very, very popular, very visible. There are multiple parking areas. It's a great, great resource, but it is very crowded these days. An option when the places are crowded, go very early in the morning, or else pretty close to sundown, but don't plan to walk quite as far. And it pays to be familiar with where you are so you can get back to where you started. So dawn and dusk, and weekdays are less crowded. Overcast days, you're going to see typically less people, but during the pandemic, that has truly not been the case. Rainy days, you're probably still going to pretty much have the trail to yourself. So if you really want to avoid crowds, take a walk in the rain. The Mass Central Rail Trail is owned by DCR, and it is planned to go across the state, and there are portions of it that are completed. The portion right now from Weston to Wayland, it's about a 4-mile portion, I believe. I have not had a chance to travel the entire length of it, but it is paved, it is handicapped accessible. A lot of it is along as you see, the power lines, it's along a power line corridor. And so it's got a few interesting things. It's not the most interesting place, but if you just want to get out and stretch and you need a handicapped accessible path, this is a great option for you to consider. and that's Weston and Wayland, and that's overseen by DCR. It is not plowed in the winter, but I think you can get out on them most of the time. They'll get icy in winter. Ashland State Park is another very, very nearby state park, and they've got the Ashland Reservoir, and there is a trail that goes all the way around the reservoir. I believe it's about a 5-mile trail. I can tell you that one side of the path from the Ashland State Park side is easy walking. If you start going counterclockwise around the reservoir, so you're going to the right as you approach the reservoir, you will find easy walking for a distance. I am not certain exactly how long. I can assure you that on the far side next to the Warner Conference Center is a very unmaintained portion of that loop trail. And if you started going clockwise, going to the left from the parking areas of Ashland State Park, you're going to find some very up and down. They were so steep, I was not able to manage it at all. So if you're truly looking for solid footing that's relatively level, make sure you go to the right as you're approaching the reservoir, and you'll have a better time. But don't necessarily expect that you can make it all the way around the reservoir. If you're more solid of foot, absolutely be my guest. But if you're looking for easy walking, don't try to make it all the way around. The Ashland Town Forest is another town-owned property, but it's kind of interesting because it's adjacent to Kawasaki Woods, which is a Sudbury Valley Trustees property in Framingham. And I found wide trails and multiple loops, and it is such a large property that a map is really, really important to bring with you. It's a beautiful area. It's got an old abandoned quarry along one of the trails. I'm not sure what all is there, but I just enjoyed walking there. There were some wet places that I wished they would have had a bridge. And for all I know, somebody has built something. It's been a couple of years since I have been there, but the paths are really quite wide and pretty well marked and very nice. Just a nice, enjoyable place to visit. Now, Grandfather's Field is in Sherburne, and it is town-owned, and it takes you by about a 1-mile path to Rocky Narrows, another Trustees of Reservation property. It offers views of the Charles. The downside of having this path, it's actually kind of an easement right at the frontage of private property facing the Charles River. The downside of it so close to the river is that in spring, like now, that path over toward Rocky Narrows is going to be underwater. So it's a big open field. I do have a trail a place, what do we call it, that you can get to the trail head. It does not have marked parking, but I do describe in the book more easy walks where the parking is, and the Charles River really is within sight there. It's just before you get over the line into Dover on, I believe it's Farm Street. But some lovely, lovely views of the Charles, but probably not the best place to go in the spring, only because a lot of it's going to be underwater and you can't go terribly far. Now, I got this photo from John Ritz, one of my friends in Hopkinton with the Trail Club, and he went to Mount Pisgah in Northborough with his dog Wilma and shared this property, because this is a place you can get another beautiful view in the area. And from what I was told, because I have not made it there yet, the path to the view, I believe it's the northern path, is smoother and easier footing. So I would like to get up there and have not made it. There are just so many places that are wonderful to get to. But this one has a nice view. Now we found Breakneck Hill in Southborough. This is another town-owned conservation land. We found this to have wide and smooth, for the most part, trails. You see there are some rocks right in the picture there over on the left, but the rocks are infrequent and they're really quite easy to get around. And so even though, yes, there are ups and downs, they are very easy slopes. They're not terribly steep. This is a former orchard. There's all sorts of apple trees all over the place, but you get some beautiful, beautiful views. And we also found very few people there on a weekend when we visited, and that kind of stayed in agreement with what we have found with other places, that these town-owned properties are not as well known. And the reason we even found this was because it was included on a map in the Sudbury Valley Trustees have a book called 42 Places West of Boston. And they include in their maps not only their properties that are Sudbury Valley Trustees properties, but adjacent other conservation land that are all right adjacent to their properties. And we just stumbled across this that was in their book. I encourage people, if you're going to be spending time in trails, support the organizations that are preserving open space. Places like Sudbury Valley Trustees, they're a little lesser known than the Trustees of Reservation, but they have that as a gift, a thank you gift for membership. You get this book. And so we were very excited to get that, and we're still using it to explore and find places that we had never heard of. But Breakneck Hill was one of our favorites. And I'd never done any exploring in Southborough, but it was really very, very nice. I remind people that most of our New England communities have cemeteries, and they will post if walkers are not welcome. They'll post if dogs are not welcome. You can check with your town hall. There are so many cemeteries that I can't even give a rule of thumb, other than a lot of them have plantings like you see here. There's a beautiful, beautiful sugar maple. A lot of cemeteries have sugar maples that provide shade and gorgeous, gorgeous color in the fall. What they typically, many of them do not offer is parking. And so if you do choose to go, you need to be very mindful of where you park. You need to be mindful that you do not disturb people who are there for funerals. They are first places of remembrance. And so if you do walk, I urge you to be respectful, keep your eyes open, look for any indications that it's not a good place to be, do your homework. But you may find that cemeteries right near you offer a wonderful, peaceful, and not very crowded place to get outside and enjoy the outdoors. A lot of times they'll be plowed, so even in the winter, they're going to be places that you can access a little more easily than some other places. So some of the good to have list, and I've mentioned hiking poles. I'll show you a picture in a few minutes. They make the difference for me in being able to go beyond strictly handicapped accessible trails. I have paralysis on my right leg. My ankle is nearly frozen, so I can't just walk on any trail. But with my hiking poles, they give enough support. It's kind of like having 4 points of contact, or if you have bad knees, they're going to take a lot of strain off of your knees and make it so you can say yes to a lot of places that otherwise you might have had to say, nope, that's too hard for me, or I don't feel safe there. Bring a map of the area you visit if at all possible. Bring some binoculars, stick them in your backpack. You never know what you might find. And especially spring and fall, a lot of our ponds and rivers have migrating water birds that are really wonderful to enjoy seeing. And they'll come every spring and fall. Every day or two, there will be a new flock of birds coming through, different varieties, lots and lots of possibilities. So bring those binoculars with you, bring a camera, or use your cell phone. My camera can get a lot better close-ups than my cell phone if there are birds that I want to see. And then rain gear, which can double as a windbreak, because sometimes when you're out, the wind will pick up. And if you've got a raincoat in your backpack, just stuffed in there for the in case the weather shifts, it will keep you dry, but it will also keep you warmer because it will break the wind and make it so that you're more comfortable out on the trail. In those colder weather times, or even in the uncertain spring as the weather is changing, bring some extra clothes, bring an extra shirt, bring an extra fleece jacket and stuff it in that backpack. You might be glad that you did. And then in fall, when we move into hunting season, you really want to be wearing blaze orange. In some states like Rhode Island, right, I live very near there, blaze orange clothing in hunting season is required, 500 inches, which is basically a vest front and back and a hat. Just an orange hat is not adequate. You really need more than that to make it so you can share the woods safely with hunters who are legally able to be out there. Some individual must-haves that I remind people of: if you have been prescribed a medication such as an EpiPen or an asthma inhaler, do not leave them in your car. Bring them with you. If you happen to step on a ground wasp nest or any kind of hornet's nest or anything like that, you will not have time to access this life-saving emergency medication before you can get back to your car. Just pack them in your backpack. Don't worry about them, but do tell another responsible person where they can get it. If you are in distress, you don't want them having to pull everything out of your backpack looking for that life-saving medication. It's part of being responsible when you're walking with other people to let them know what your medical concerns are, what they can do to be helpful, and where that life-saving medication is. And during the pandemic, I urge people, even if you are outside where it's supposed to be safer, bring a face mask. There are many times when you are on a trail that they're narrow and it's not possible to really distance yourself from others on the trail. Rail trails, it's typically easier, but when you're in a woodland trail, it is very, very difficult to get across, to avoid people. When you see someone coming, pull your mask up. It's courtesy. It will reassure some of those who have conditions that make us feel more at risk, and we'll get through this somehow. I look forward to the day that I don't need to put this post up, but for now we're still there. Another thing that you want to be mindful of when you're out, if you're doing any kind of regular walking, is to educate yourself about what poison ivy looks like. Isn't it beautiful? This is beautiful poison ivy in the fall. It turns gorgeous colors, and you want to make sure that you're not walking right by it and brushing up against it. You will know later that you have. So the best tactic is avoidance. And the best way to be able to avoid it is by educating yourself what it looks like. There are many pictures on the internet that you can look at And then if you're with people who know better what it looks like, have them help you keep leading, just repeat, repeat, repeat. Sadly, there is many opportunities for you to practice learning what poison ivy looks like on the trail. It is very, very common on our trails in New England and elsewhere as well. When you see these hairy roots going up a tree, those are poison ivy roots. That's a very healthy poison ivy plant that you're looking at right there. And even in the winter, those roots are just as noxious, nasty, and will give you as much allergic reaction as the greenery will. So make sure you keep away from them, but recognize that those are poison ivy. You don't want to touch them. You certainly don't want to ever touch when it's on firewood, and you certainly do not want to ever put that on in firewood that would be burned in your house. You will be very, very sad. If you see signs like this, my dear friend Kate took this picture out in Hawaii, but I just love to share this and say, when you see a sign of any kind, stop and read it. Pay attention. This is not like they're billboards along trails. If there's signs on a trail, there's typically a very important reason for it, and it's usually for your benefit. A lot of times the sign will say that you're walking along an easement and please stay to the trail. If you choose to disregard those signs, that person that has granted an easement because it's private property can take that easement away in a finger, just in a blink of an eye, and that trail is gone if people who use the trail disregard the signs and do not respect the private property that's there. So when you see a sign, please stop and read it, and then try as best you can to follow the directions that it offers. So here we've got, I've mentioned the hiking poles. You see my hiking poles there. So I've got on rain gear, I've got layered clothing, I've got my boots, I've got my socks tucked into my pants because ticks are an issue in the winter. So rain gear, layered clothing, boots, socks tucked into pants for tick prevention, hiking poles. And I typically have rubber tips on the ends of my hiking poles for pavement, for slick rock. They'll give me more purchase, and the metal tips that are how hiking poles come with. The problem is I lose them all the time, so we glue the rubber tips to my hiking poles so I don't keep losing them in muck when we're walking through that. I've got my hiking mask ready to pull. This was at Hop Brook Preserve. This was a Metacomet land trust. Again, another small land trust in Blackstone, Massachusetts. It's got a little triple cascade in the spring. It dries up in the summer, but it's very, very pretty in the spring. And we see very, very few people there. It has a small parking lot, so it's not going to be crowded, and not that many people know about it. A lovely place to walk. And a photo tip when you're out on the trail and you're looking for foliage or just landscape photography of any kind, make sure to remember to look up as well. You're going to have a different perspective on your world when you look up on the trail. Make sure you're stable so you don't tip over like I would, and look up and see what you can see by not just looking straight ahead, not just looking down, but make sure you look up as well. And so these are the three local trail guides. The 37 towns in South Central Massachusetts. Easy Walks in Massachusetts covers basically the Blackstone Valley out to Millis direction. More Easy Walks is more Metro West, including Framingham, Natick, and Hopkinton. And Easy Walks and Paddles in the 10 Mile River watershed is more down the Attleboro direction. I did that in cooperation with the 10 Mile River Watershed Council. They wanted their own Easy Walks book, and so we collaborated to write that book. And so the subheading of every book tells you exactly which towns are in there, and they are all available on Amazon. I know Barnes and Noble can order them for you. And then the Finding Easy Walks Wherever You Are is a lot of what I based this presentation on, of the different principles that I write about, whether it's learning how to avoid crowds, avoid disappointment by having plan B, appropriate clothing and how to dress and layering, and many, many, many different strategies for finding easy walks wherever you travel, wherever you are, if that's right here, home, which is where a lot of us have been, or when you're able to start traveling again, to be able to say, we're in a brand new area, where do we start? What do we do? Because these are the strategies that my family and I have used from traveling across the country to Canada and Ireland. We have been able to find easy walks wherever we have been. We have shared those lessons in this book, and I'm thrilled to be able to share them with you. Thank you so much, and happy trails. And